If I got you, I'm putting you right on the air. In studio, one of the last politicians that I have any hope might actually be honorable once they got there, Sergeant Brian Mast. He's running for District 18, the Congressional District, which is being vacated by Patrick Murphy and the Murphy machine that's running a senatorial campaign. That's the strangest thing I've ever seen. I mean, Brian, you jumped into this at a moment where the political landscape is always rotten, but this is beyond rotten. So, you're such a man of dignity. You must feel dirty at the end of some days.
There are days that it's like that. But I think people genuinely want to believe in people that have worn a uniform in defense of this country. And I'm going to acknowledge, listen, not every person that wore a uniform has done the right thing. But people want to believe that if you put on a uniform, it's deeper than that cloth. It's something that's inside of you that allows you to serve this country with the commitment to give the last breath in your lungs. And I think for nearly everybody, it is that way. And that's why I think it's so important that people serve before they ask to lead.
Well, I agree with you, especially if they're going to be responsible for funding or sending people into battle zones, which to me, it's always been incomprehensible that you would have presidents of the United States. Now, I don't think you have to have served, but to have so many who haven't served, and to look at Congress and the Senate today, so many of them hadn't served. After World War II, they were all veterans in there.
Yeah, well, after World War II, Korea, Vietnam, I think at its peak, it was the mid-1970s. Somewhere over 400 members between the two houses had service in the military. And today, it's under 80, and of that, it's under a dozen that have felt the sting of battle, that have had time in combat. And you think, we've been at war for the last 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the guys that are up there are like JAG. That's just the truth. Like my friend up here,
Ron DeSantis, he was an attorney.
Mahoney,
David
right?
Jolly, he was an attorney.
Right, these guys were JAG attorneys, and I respect them for giving their time to the military, but it's not the same as going in and looking for IEDs like you did. It's a different mindset.
No, there's an important difference between spending time on the battlefield and truly understanding what it is to be in a situation of life and death, to truly have to fire your rifle in defense of yourself or in defense of those on the ground next to you, to understand just the difference that can come about by the resources that you have in order to wage war.
Yeah, well, so that's missing. And not that, I didn't think General Eisenhower was the greatest president, but he did little harm. And I can certainly think of men right now who would make fine leaders. Most of them don't want to do it, though. They put a foot in like Rick Perry and they take it out. They just it's a dangerous territory.
Where people are throwing around the name of General Mattis, Marine Corps, I forget, Marine Corps 4-star general. People throwing around his name, wishing he'd throw his hat into the ring. That'd be an honorable thing.
Yeah, but it's, I think the politics is so ugly that people of integrity have a tough time these days overcoming that. At least you've been in battle, you've seen mud. For some people, this is a first experience. I look at some of these new candidates, they're stunned at what's going on.
No, listen, it is a very ugly place, and this is something that I run into right now, where people look at every single person that's made a contribution to you, and they really look at that under the microscope, and they say, this person made a contribution to you, you're inherently jaded. And that's where I have to tell people constantly, listen, I don't care who you are. You don't have enough money to buy me, to serve this country without regard for gain or sacrifice. And that's how I'll do it till I take my last breath.
And, I always like to point out there's a difference between donating to a candidate because you believe in what they believe in and of donating to a candidate who you don't agree with in the hopes that you can change their mind. And that's a big difference for me.
Oh, it's a huge difference. I often tell people, look, when you make a contribution to somebody, you should understand, or at least to me, it doesn't come with special access. It doesn't come with some special privilege. You're helping me get the message out of how I'm going to serve this country or continue serving this country. It's not to change what my philosophy is for a worldview.
Right. Well, yeah. You, like I said, you're one of the last ones I believe might actually do that. When I find out at the midnight last night that I have two competing presidential candidates who decide to do in the front runner, I get sick to my stomach. That's not my country. That's not how this is supposed to work. It's like Tammany Hall.
No, it does. I don't think it matters. It should matter where you fall on the political spectrum for these presidentials on our ticket here. you want to see the system go in a way that's honorable. You want to see the voice and the vote of every single
let
person
the people
out there
decide.
matter. Let the people decide.
That's what this is supposed to be about. Not let the the overlords decide. And I got news for the Cruz and Kasich combination there. Those guys hate you both like poison, or they would have jumped behind you a long time ago. You're just an easy way to beat up Trump. We'll be right back. I actually like David Jolly's Stop Act, but that's a whole nother show. It was on 60 Minutes last night. He's another one of these been sort of in the military guys. So let me ask you, Brian Mast is in the studio. He's running for the Republican nomination in Congressional District 18. When's the primary already?
Primary is August 30th. We got a pretty late one here in Florida.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like this should have been settled a long time ago. And so you know who your candidate is and you can get behind them. So you're going to have the month of September and October to run a campaign against your opponent.
Almost not even, because you think of how much absentee voting is done in Florida. Most people that have a second home are probably somewhere else in the month of August in Florida.
Right.
So that's part of what makes it entirely realistic that somebody can flip this seat from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. It's next to impossible to beat an incumbent in Florida because you have no time to go up against them if you're a challenger.
Yeah, I totally disagree. But that's because I've been successful at unseating, incumbents before. It's a different, let me tell you this. It can't be done unless you have the perfect candidate. You are the perfect candidate. So, see, to me, I could have unseated any incumbent with you. There's no question in my mind.
I didn't say impossible.
I know what the because you have to do much less marketing when you have a particular kind of candidate. That's all there is. I mean, if you're a schleppy teacher from, Lake Worth and you're trying to run for office, no offense to the schleppy teachers who are running, but it's hard to build a brand. But if you have a person who not only served in the military, returns from the military, sans two limbs, and says, I still want to serve, it's an easy sell. I mean, I don't have to twist any arms to get them to think you're the real deal.
Service wasn't done for me. I wasn't done serving when I had to leave the battlefield. I wasn't ready to stop.
Where can he not get elected? I mean, it's silly. Anyway, that's just me. I've said that to you from the moment I first met you. So it's
well, you tried to sell me on not doing it at all, but you talk about the den of snakes that it is, which it is. It's a den of snakes.
Because I like you, and you get in bed with all this evil. You have to have the full armor of God on to protect you, because I pray for you, because this is a nasty arena that you're waging battle in. You think that it's one thing to fight an enemy in Iraq or Afghanistan where you know who the enemy is. You go up to Washington where those are supposed to be your allies and you're fighting them. It's a whole different kind of battle, and in many ways. It has disturbed the American public so much that you see the rise of a Sanders and the rise of a Trump. This is a statement about the current situation in Washington.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
You're pointing to it. Right now, today, we can't agree on the color. I said it more colorfully earlier. We can't agree on the color of certain things out there, right? I mean, you can't agree whether you should go into the men's room or the ladies' room. That's the place that we're at right now. Did you ever imagine we'd be at a place like this?
No, I never did. I never imagined that my president would announce yesterday that he's sending how many more troops?
250.
Okay.
A drop in the bucket.
And not to lead. He keeps pointing out not to lead. And they'll be skipping. They won't have boots on the ground. They'll be like hovering over the ground or something. I don't know how they're going to pull that off. But to me, that's like saying I'm sending 250 targets over there.
This lack of commitment is so dangerous for every person that's in uniform. And this goes back to I say, the time of the Arab Spring. Sending over 250 soldiers would have been effective at the time of the Arab Spring.
Oh, yeah.
That is 250 Special Operations Forces. That would have been an effective thing to do. But you fast forward to today when there's 30 to 50,000 ISIS fighters across Syria and Iraq.
Please.
250 troops is not the commitment that
it's dangerous, is what it is. It puts a target on Americans' backs because they can't fire at anybody. They're not actually in a war zone as soldiers. They're just advisors. What does that mean? You know better than anyone. there are contractors who do that. Shouldn't send the American military to do that.
Well, I think you got to step back and look at this ideologically. And Ronald Reagan said two of my favorite quotes that pertain to this. He said, number one in his inauguration speech, peace is our highest aspiration. We'll fight for it, we'll sacrifice for it, we'll die for it, but we won't surrender for it.
Exactly.
And he went on to say later, the only sure way to guarantee peace
It's through strength.
is to make your enemies surrender.
Yeah.
But that's not the commitment of this administration right now.
No, and his legacy, the Nobel Peace Prize is it's just laughable to me now, because when he came into office, the Middle East was relatively peaceful considering how awful it has been. We had suppressed some evil. We had some evil under control, like Gaddafi, and certainly Egypt was in much better condition. And then he came in there and he literally turned it into a hellhole. I mean, every nation is involved in some kind of unrest right now. The Arab Spring turned into like the Arab Winter.
Well, think of all the blunders. You pointed to it. Okay, the Arab Spring, the Syrian Red Line, the Russian reset, China's expansion in the South China Sea, North
Libya.
Korea, South Korea lobbing rockets back and forth.
Oh,
you name it.
Yeah. But they're making islands now, China. They're just making islands. And we're sitting here going like, well, we've restored the economy. This president had the audacity to go to Europe and talk about how he saved the world economy. And I'm still trying to figure out, why do I have so many friends who are terminally unemployed if we have saved the world economy? I'm talking about people who've been off the books, not working legitimately for 5 and 10 years in this country.
And I think that's one of the toughest questions that people ask politically. And they say, you have to look at this and say, we can't expect to have every single job that we want here if we don't make ourselves competitive to have jobs. If we have the highest corporate tax rate that exists in all of the industrialized world, if we have these disincentives to labor like Obamacare, if we have, these very high minimum wages like what you're seeing out in California, people have to be paid based on what their productivity is. And if you're creating these disincentives, companies are going to move.
Not to mention the regulations, which are out of sight. I just had another friend who was trying to open up a business which would employ people. It has been months trying to get through the regulations and the red tape that's all for naught. There'll be no cooking in this facility, but they have to have all this, restaurant equipment there. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
I kind of make that point often when I'm speaking to college students, where they talk about the idea of how they succeed going forward. And I say, look, you pursue whatever degree you want, but understand that if you pursue some more alternative degree as opposed to business administration,
ethnobotany,
exactly, so then you're probably going to have to be an entrepreneur. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, that's an honorable thing. But understand, the government regulation out there is going to directly affect how successful you are.
Absolutely. And that's, look, having 2 young adult children who are rather successful, I had those conversations with my kids. They had guidance counselors who had those conversations with your kids. Yeah, it's nice to go study philosophy, and my daughter's undergraduate degree is completely useless, ethnobotany for real. And then she had to go off and do 2 years and teach for America and learn how hard it is out here for people, and to make a decision like, well, maybe I better get a real profession that actually has some jobs available in it. And, and she's a physician, but even in that, she walked into medical school, and the first class she had to take, when I went to medical school, which I flunked out of, but she didn't, when she went, instead of autopsies and cutting up cadavers, which freaked me right out, they made her take a course in business. She has to know how to run a practice. She has to know how to fill out forms. I mean, before she even put a scalpel to anything, she was learning how to run a practice. That's what even medicine has come to these days. It's all upside down, Brian. You going to fix it?
They should maybe offer a course like that when people arrive to Washington, D.C.
How about they just...
This is how you budget.
Yeah, forget it. So you kidding? And as a congressman, you realize that you'll be given this enormous budget. And I say to every congressman, and I've only had 3 live up to the standard, you come in under budget. If you mean what you say, you come in under budget. Whatever you're budgeted, I don't care. Come in under budget. Because if you can't do that, if you can't take the $1 million they're going to give you to run your congressional office and skim, a couple of $1,000s off that, then you're no help to me in the Treasury. Right. And I've had, Steve King comes in under budget every year. Lou Barletta comes in under budget every year. And there's a handful of guys who pull it off.
Actions speak louder than words. Lead by your example. You want to be a leader? Then lead.
Exactly. and don't stay forever. You know, like you have a life. You are a promising young man. You don't have to be a congressman. Like I looked at Charlie Rangel the other day. What has he got? Like 75 years in Congress? The man has never sponsored a piece of legislation in his life. I think he's co-sponsored 3. He served like 18 terms or something. It's absurd. You know, it's not a career path. It's a service, like you said, and you're supposed to come back. Can you stay till the top of the hour? We'll take one more quick break. Get a little business taken care of. Sergeant Brian Mast in the studio, Congressional District 18. If you've never heard him, go to his website. We'll give you all that information. Exactly. I'll tell you, it's a great time to be in talk radio, but it's a terrible time for America right now, and that's you know, it's that conflict that I feel all the time, which only a warrior would understand. Like on one hand, I love life, and I love my country, and on the other hand, sometimes you got to kill, you know, to preserve liberty. The tree of liberty is watered with the blood of patriots.
That's right.
You know,
the price for freedom has always been high, but Americans have always been willing to pay that price.
Exactly. A volunteer. We're talking about a volunteer army that we have had, which is still the best and the strongest in the world. As hard as this president has tried to diminish it, it still remains the best. But for how much longer? You know, I look at what China's doing, and you know as well as I do. There's a lot of stealth military operations going on around the world, and every now and then we get a headline, oh, Russia buzzed an aircraft carrier, oh, you know, China's building islands and, you know, has a navy that already is comparable to ours. They got more submarines than we do. That's terrifying to me.
And that goes back to, you know, everybody looking at and saying, what is my worldview? Do I think the United States of America should be that hegemonic stability throughout the world? Or are you misguided and think maybe we'd be better off having Russia or China or some other country out there as the hegemonic stability? It's going to be somebody.
It's going to be
It
somebody.
be the U.S.
That's right. It's not going to be the Pope standing at the UN, you know, everybody singing Kumbaya around the world. That's not happening. Somebody will become the leader of this world, and if it's not America, it's not going to be a good thing.
But the world is at its best when it's America, and that's the historical truth of it. And Americans should be proud of that. That shouldn't be something that we run away from. We need to say that proudly. The world is at its best when America is on top.
Absolutely. You look at, you know, Russia wants more, wants Ukraine, Crimea, keeps adding to its country. You see what China's doing, even creating spaces. America, if it goes anywhere to help anybody, the only thing they ask for is a plot of land to bury their soldiers. That's it. We don't take countries. We're not interested in your country. We invite you to our country instead. I mean, who better to lead this world? What more sane philosophy than this republic?
Well, that's proven, right? You think about it. When the world needs aid or some sort of military assistance, they turn to the United States of America. When there's a tsunami or a earthquake, we're the first ones there, right? If there's tornadoes in the Midwest, if there's a hurricane somewhere along the coast, Americans drop what they're doing, they gather the resources that they need, and they go out there and they help fix the problem for their neighbors. They help their neighbor when they're down. That's who we are. You don't even have to be our neighbor. You could be halfway around the world. That's who we are. And that's why we have been good stewards of the world's security in the past. You know, when it was required to take out Hitler, I assure you, it wasn't happening because any other country jumped in. They always follow the strong man who also has the moral high ground. And we've always had that moral high ground. I mean, I hear, you know, oh, well, you went into, you know, South America and you've done there have been mistakes made. You know, I people who you know worship Ronald Reagan. You know, I don't happen to be one of them. There's parts about Ronald Reagan that are just inspirational, no question about it. He was a great inspirational leader, but he made some mistakes. You know, everybody does.
That's right, everybody does. And my job is to point out when the mistakes are made. The only problem in this presidency that we're currently in is it's nothing but mistakes. I can't point to a single success. Not healthcare, which was supposed to be his biggest achievement. Not the world situation, the Nobel Peace Prize, which he not only didn't earn. If he had a shred of decency, he would return to the Swedes and give them their money back. But
There's only one real place of hope that I saw it once, and that was the most recent State of the Union address, where I thought we were going to see just a touch of humility, and he said something to the effect of, his biggest regret was the divide that he saw, that grew between the left and the right, and you thought there was going to be some humility there, but then you realize it was on the heels.
He blamed the other side,
yeah, exactly,
as he always does.
Pointing fingers, and it all went out the window.
Please, and there's nobody on the other side who's standing up and talking about what's really affecting Middle America. Brian Mast is running for the Republican nomination in District 18. What's that district now? It's a lot of rural, isn't it?
Oh, well, it's a good mix, right? It runs the breadth of the coast, so you have a lot of people that are in and out of town depending on the weather, and then as soon as you get west of I-95 and the Turnpike, you got a lot of agriculture, a lot of rural, a lot of cattle, a lot of everything. So it's a great mix of suburban, beachfront, riverways, waterways, estuaries, lagoons, cattle, everything that you can imagine. We got a lot of it here.
Well, so if you're all interested in this campaign or in helping, you can go to the website.
My website is mastforcongress.com.
That's M-A-S-T for Congress.com. Get involved. You need to get back to the grassroots, because the party's not helping anybody. I don't care what you say. The party's actually making it tough on these candidates.
Yeah, we need your help. We can't do it without people. I always tell folks, I had a lot of success on the battlefield, and I couldn't have done that without the right people to my left and right on the battlefield. And running for Congress is the same way. I can't do it without the help of other people, without the right people around me who believe in me, who believe in the message, who are willing to believe in America and get us out there and help us lead.
Well, there you have it, folks. Visit the website, mastforcongress.com. Donate your time. If you got treasure, donate your treasure. If you got a place where in that district where they would like to hear from Brian Mast. I heard you had a forum, right? How'd that go?
We did. The forum went great. There was, 6 of us up on stage, and everybody offered opinions. Here's the thing about those forums. We all make each other better when those things occur. We all learn from each other. We all pick up things, and we all sharpen ourselves. So it's good to
In other words, they're all going to be saying the things they heard Brian say. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.